The small town of Klingenberg, Germany, held its secrets close, shrouded in an air of mystery and silence. Nestled among rolling hills, it exuded an old-world charm, a place seemingly untouched by the anxieties of modern life, where time seemed to stand still. But beneath the surface, a darkness was brewing, an ominous presence that would soon reveal itself. In the heart of this quaint town lived Anneliese Michel, a young woman raised on a foundation of unwavering faith and deep-rooted traditions. Anneliese's world, steeped in Catholic tradition, offered comfort and structure, a sanctuary from the uncertainties of the outside world. Her family, devout and deeply rooted in their beliefs, instilled in her the unwavering conviction that God's presence was absolute and unyielding. But at the tender age of 16, Anneliese's life took a sinister turn, one that would forever alter her destiny. A seizure, as swift and brutal as a lightning strike, shattered her reality, leaving her shaken and confused, her world turned upside down. This was no ordinary ailment, no simple medical condition that could be easily explained or treated. It was the harbinger of a darkness that would soon consume her, a prelude to a much greater struggle. The doctors, with their stethoscopes and skeptical gazes, offered a diagnosis: temporal lobe epilepsy, a condition that seemed to fit the symptoms. They prescribed medications, their promises of healing falling flat against the growing terror in Anneliese's eyes, a terror that no medicine could quell. The seizures persisted, each one a violent reminder of the fragility of her own body, a relentless assault on her sense of self. It was as if some unseen force had reached out from the shadows, wrapping its icy fingers around her, squeezing the life out of her, leaving her gasping for breath. Fear, sharp and relentless, began to gnaw at the edges of her sanity, eroding her sense of reality and plunging her into a world of darkness and despair. The medications provided little solace. Anneliese's seizures increased in frequency and intensity, each one a terrifying spectacle. Her body, once strong and vibrant, was now a vessel at war with itself. It was as if some unseen puppet master was yanking at her limbs, forcing her into grotesque contortions. She was admitted to the psychiatric ward, the sterile white walls doing little to soothe her tormented mind. The doctors, with their clinical detachment, spoke of neurological disorders, of chemical imbalances in the brain. But Anneliese knew, deep in her soul, that something far more sinister was at play. This was not just a physical ailment, it was an assault on her very being. Depression settled over her like a shroud. Her once bright spirit, so full of life and laughter, dimmed under the weight of her affliction. The world, once a place of beauty and promise, now seemed cold, distant, and filled with an unshakable dread. She withdrew into herself, seeking refuge in the familiar comfort of her faith. But even prayer, once her solace, brought no relief. The darkness had seeped into every aspect of her life, poisoning her thoughts, her dreams, her very perception of reality. The whispers started subtly. At first, Anneliese dismissed them as figments of her imagination, the cruel tricks of a mind strained by illness. But the voices persisted, growing louder, more insistent, more menacing. They taunted her, mocked her, threatened to drag her down into the abyss. Then came the visions. Grotesque faces, twisted and malevolent, leered at her from the shadows. They appeared in the flickering candlelight, in the reflection of the window pane, even in the faces of those she loved most. They were relentless, their eyes burning into her soul, filling her with a terror she had never known. Religious icons, once sources of comfort and solace, now filled her with unspeakable dread. The crucifix, a symbol of Christ's sacrifice, became an object of revulsion. She recoiled from its touch, as if it burned her skin. The holy water, once a source of spiritual cleansing, now felt like acid against her flesh. Her behavior became increasingly erratic. She spoke in tongues, her voice distorted and guttural, spouting blasphemies that chilled the blood. She lashed out violently, her strength amplified by an unseen force. Her family watched in horror as the sweet, devout girl they knew transformed into a stranger before their very eyes. The Michel family was caught in a maelstrom of fear and confusion, their once peaceful lives now overshadowed by an unrelenting darkness. Their beloved Anneliese, the light of their lives, was slipping away, her torment both physical and spiritual, leaving them feeling utterly helpless. Doctors, with their cold diagnoses and clinical explanations, offered no comfort, only adding to the family's growing despair. Their world, once defined by unwavering faith, was crumbling around them, each unanswered prayer chipping away at their hope. They clung to their belief in God, but doubt began to creep in like a noxious weed, threatening to choke the very roots of their faith. Why was their daughter, so devout, so pure of heart, being subjected to such unimaginable suffering? It was a question that haunted their every waking moment. Had they somehow failed her? Had their love and care not been enough to protect her from this torment? Had their faith been a lie? These questions gnawed at their souls, leaving them in a state of perpetual anguish. Desperate for answers, they turned to their faith, seeking solace and guidance from their parish priest, hoping for a miracle. The possibility of demonic possession, a concept both terrifying and strangely comforting, began to take root in their minds, offering a potential explanation for Anneliese's suffering. It was a horrifying thought, yet it offered a glimmer of hope, a chance that there might be a way to save her. If their daughter was possessed, then perhaps there was a chance, however slim, that she could be saved, that they could reclaim the Anneliese they once knew. Their pleas for an exorcism were met with skepticism and resistance, the Church wary of such claims in an age of scientific reasoning. The Church, once a bastion of spiritual certainty, now approached such matters with caution, often dismissing them as mental illness, leaving the family feeling abandoned. The family's pleas were met with well-meaning but ultimately hollow reassurances, words that did little to ease their pain. Anneliese needed medical attention, they were told, not ancient rituals, a statement that felt like a dismissal of their deepest fears. But the Michels refused to give up hope, their love for Anneliese driving them to seek answers beyond the realm of medicine. Driven by love for their daughter and a steadfast belief in the power of their faith, they continued to search for someone, anyone, who would listen to their pleas, who would understand the depth of their conviction, who would see the truth that they knew in their hearts. Anneliese was not ill, she was possessed. Their journey was far from over, but their resolve was unbreakable. Word of Anneliese's affliction reached Father Ernst Alt, a seasoned priest known for his unwavering faith and his experience with the dark fringes of spiritual warfare. His reputation for confronting the supernatural was well established, and he was no stranger to the whispers of the unseen. In Anneliese's tormented cries and her family's desperate pleas, he saw not the ravings of madness, but the unmistakable signs of demonic influence. The anguish in their eyes mirrored the countless souls he had encountered before. He saw past the medical diagnoses, past the skepticism of his peers. To him, the clinical explanations fell short of capturing the true horror that gripped Anneliese. He saw a young soul ensnared in a battle for which she was ill-prepared. Her suffering was a silent cry for help, a plea that resonated deeply within him. He recognized the unmistakable stench of evil, a chilling presence that sent shivers down his spine. It was a darkness that seemed to seep into the very air around her. Father Alt knew the risks. He understood the peril that came with challenging such malevolent forces. He knew the Church's stance on exorcisms, their reluctance to embrace the possibility of demonic possession in a modern world. The skepticism was a barrier he had to overcome. He was aware of the potential for ridicule, for accusations of fanaticism and delusion. The modern world was quick to dismiss what it could not understand, but he also knew that his duty, as a servant of God, was to confront evil wherever he found it, regardless of the cost. His faith demanded nothing less. He became a staunch advocate for the Michel family, amplifying their pleas for an exorcism to the diocese. His voice became their beacon of hope. He argued that Anneliese's condition was beyond the scope of medical science, that her torment was spiritual in nature, a battle for her very soul. The doctor's charts and diagnoses could not capture the essence of her suffering. He presented his case with a conviction that was difficult to ignore, his words carrying the weight of his experience and the depth of his faith. His determination was unwavering, his resolve unbreakable. The Catholic Church, hesitant at first, finally yielded to the mounting evidence and the fervent pleas of both the Michel family and Father Alt. The bishop, after careful consideration and consultation with theological experts, granted permission for an exorcism to be performed on Anneliese Michel. The weight of this decision was not lost on anyone involved. This was not a decision taken lightly, but a solemn recognition that Anneliese's plight was beyond the realm of conventional understanding. It was a last resort, a desperate attempt to wrest a young soul from the clutches of evil. Father Alt, appointed as the chief exorcist, was joined by Father Arnold Renz, another priest renowned for his piety and spiritual fortitude. Together, they would face the darkness that had taken root in Anneliese's soul, armed with the power of their faith and the ancient rites of the Church. The battle lines were drawn. On one side stood two priests, their faith tested, their resolve unshaken. A force older than time, a malevolent entity that had claimed dominion over a young woman's soul. The stage was set for a confrontation that would test the limits of faith, the boundaries of sanity, and the very nature of good and evil.